Well, we constantly hear doomsday predictions about budget deficits, intergenerational theft, and the threat of inflation. What should we really be scared of?
Healthcare costs. No, this is incredible. Honestly, unemployment. No, this is really incredible because they managed to turn reality on their head. So you have all these people running around Washington who use the debt, and they've scared people to death about this as this measure of generational equity. And just the most fundamental level, it makes no sense, because if you envision, we're incurring, trillions of dollars of debt. It's a big debt, I won't argue that. But at some point, we're all going to be dead. So where's the debt going to be? Well, our children are going to own it. Our grandchildren are going to own it. So it's not a generational burden. It could be an intergenerational burden. If Bill Gates' kids own it all and the rest of us will be paying taxes to Bill Gates' kids, well, that's an issue. But that's not generational. It's, Bill Gates' kids versus our kids, everyone else's kids. It's not generational. It's distributional within the generation. What we pass on to future generations is a whole economy, a whole society. If we give them a society where we have no debt, we've paid off our debt, we're really responsible, but we didn't educate our kids, we didn't repair the infrastructure, we didn't fix the environment, they should thank us for that? That's utterly loony. So, yeah, we should think about the debt, but really in the scheme of things, that's a very, very small matter. And right now, if we could talk about employing people by borrowing more, which we can, we're going to be doing a lot more for our kids by giving their parents jobs than we will by saying, oh, but we saved you $100 billion on the debt, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, if anything, they're making an argument for financing more stimulus through money creation rather than through borrowing, if they're worried about that. But really, it is really true. I mean, this is going to be the next big battle that we're going to have to fight, right? Because obviously you have 10% unemployment projected for next year by the Congressional Budget Office. And, they're going to want, all the conservative forces and including many liberals, are going to they're going to want to cool off, or not, they're going to want to raise interest rates, they're going to oppose another stimulus, which we all think is going to be necessary, since this one was...
And you said at the time...
Very small, that's right. This stimulus is very small relative to the fall off in private demand that we've had from the collapse of the housing bubble. So these are the battles we're going to have ahead, and this is going to be a tough one, because look at the lineup. I mean, you have all these economists and all these politicians, and it's a popular idea too, because most people are not they're not well informed on this. They see debt, they think of debt of the federal government very analogous to their own household debt, and it's not like that at all. and I mean, we had a debt of public debt of 109% of GDP after World War II, and it declined slowly as a percent of GDP, mainly because the economy grew. And it had, here we had the first, at least until 1973, it was the not only very rapid growth, one of the fastest growth we had in our history, but also well distributed. And that started off the period with this really huge debt. So debt has never historically been the determining factor in terms of how things go, going forward. So we are much better off. I mean, Dean's been emphasizing this a lot, but we are much better off, even if we have to incur more debt, just to lower unemployment next year and the year after. And that's what's going to matter. You're going to have a really hard battle, I think, on this, because the media is not going to understand it.
Where are middle-class jobs going to come from?
Well, any job could be a middle-class job, and I think it's really important to understand. It really depends on the social setting, the social supports for those jobs. So,
and the pay.
Well, that's
the pay.
That's what gets you the pay, yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot of jobs here that, you look at the same jobs in Europe. People work at retail jobs, and they have health care, they have a pension, they have a standard of living that, certainly fits the definition of middle class by our views. Most part, retail jobs here won't do that. You're getting $8, $9, $10 an hour. Either you don't have health care, no pension for sure. So it really depends on your system of support. So obviously unions can be a very big part of that story. Certainly in Europe they are. If you have higher minimum wages, that gets you part of the way there. I mean, probably the minimum wage will always be a bad wage, but the point is everything moves up with it. So you can have, I'm less worried that, about where the jobs are than what the jobs look like. And we've seen a lot of jobs, have gone the other way. So I got a kick out of this. There's Washington Post had a piece a couple years ago talking about how we have these low-paying jobs that only immigrants will do, and the two categories they gave were meat packing and construction. And you go, well, yeah, that's in part true today. That was not true 20 years ago. Those were heavily unionized sectors, and no one would ever want to work in a meat packing factory. I'm sure of that, but those were good-paying jobs. That's not true today.
Construction was a very good-paying job.
Yeah. So you didn't have a hard time. You had a lot of people that wanted to be construction workers, 20, 30 years ago. They were good-paying jobs. No, now you've lowered the pay, you've weakened the unions there, so yeah, you might only be able to get an immigrant to work there because it's a bad, dangerous job with low pay and no benefits.
Well, so we're coming, winding down. Where do you guys want to be in 10 years? Like, looking back over how far you've come, what's your Newt Gingrich 10-year plan for CEPR?
God, I wish I had thought about that before this.
I want to have some time to think about that. No, we really, I'm really hoping that we have more of a movement that we're actively plugged into. And, we've been really pessimistic on a lot of things, but I'm still really optimistic. Part of the story is that, we're blabbing over the internet. We couldn't have done this, 10, 15 years ago. And if we didn't have the internet, I really would be very, very scared.
I know, I hate to be an internet triumphalist, but it does facilitate, critical mass around progressive issues in a way that we never could.
It's a tremendous equalizer, and the media, the mainstream media, they do have to respond. The Washington Post, Brad DeLong, of course, beats them up all the time.
And you do your share. You've got Beat the Press over.
I'm modern compared to Brad, though. Brad calls them the stupidest people. They call him up to complain. I've had some people call me up to complain too, though. But they do feel the need to respond. So I think that there is potential that we can, it's still very insipid. It's not, we have, all these people reading the stuff over the net and they're about to storm the White House or anything. But it is building, and I think we do have a lot of potential there. So I'm hoping that we're working with, a real organized movement that has some real political power to get things done. It's 10 years down the road.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. I don't want to sound as pessimistic as I have been about,
You're the optimist here.
Yeah, I'm the optimist. Well, first of all, I also work a lot on the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is, if you go south of the United States, South America in particular, you have had these revolts at the ballot box where the people just decided they've had these neoliberal policies long enough, and they're going to, they just went over the heads of the established political classes and voted in new governments, and they're getting things. In some countries they're getting health care, they're getting better macroeconomic policies, they're, get increases in education spending. And so I think, again, it varies by country, and you can go through each one of them, but it was definitely much, from where they were starting, it's much bigger change, much more democracy, much more participation than you've gotten here. But I don't want to write off what we had here. What we had here, I think, in the 2008 election, and even when we began the 2006 election, is the end of a nearly 4-decade rightward drift. Okay, I do believe that, and I don't think it's going to go back. So the problem is we're not really moving forward very fast. But nonetheless, there's something to be said for not going backwards. Now we could. I think it's still in question. What's going to happen? You say Obama has 2 terms. At the end of those 2 terms, is the distribution of income in this country going to be less, even more unequal than when he started? It is possible. I think the Clinton term was, even though that was, it was the longest-running business cycle expansion in U.S. history. Look at the structural counter reforms during that period: NAFTA, WTO. Welfare reform, the financial deregulation.
That was a goodie.
These were such terrible structural reforms that you could almost argue there wasn't that much damage for Bush to do when he came in. There wasn't that much left he could do. He went after Social Security, but that wasn't possible. You have a sixth of the country gets benefits from that system. So, he had to go overseas to do his damage. It is definitely a defining moment. We're in. we don't know how it's going to end up, but I would say that it's definitely the beginning of a new era, and it's going to really depend on what everybody makes out of it. There definitely are opportunities now that we didn't have when we were just fighting to save the things that we had won 70 years ago.
Well, I just want to say thanks so much to you guys for everything you do. You've both been wonderful contributors and partners in online activism for progressive change, and the faith that people have in both of your intellects and the work that you do has really made a lot of things possible. I truly don't think that what would be happening with 1207 would be happening, the Audit the Fed bill, without the intellectual validation that you gave, the permission to buy that you gave Democratic members of Congress to sign on board. But I think you've done wonderful work. 10 years at CEPR is really fantastic. Is there anything you want to add?
I want to thank all of our staff. We can't really do any of this without them. Don Lobel is here, Nicole Wu, Deborah James, Dan Beaton, Chris Warner, Kunda Chinku, all of these people, Alex Main, you want to name them?
Ellen Barber, John Schmidt.
Yeah, John Schmidt.
Deborah James. Yeah.
All the people that work here, and some have been here for years.
And they're unionized.
And
yes!
IFPTE Local 70. International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 70.
They're the ones who, that means they get to tell us what to do, right? The union bosses.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it's like when you have a union?
Yeah.
But really, they really make this organization run. I really want to thank them a lot for all the great work that they do every day.
And we're going to be back here for the 20th.
Absolutely. Let's make it 8.
You got it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.